Good morning. So welcome to Beacon Zen outside. So again, today we're doing a one-day sitting, and because of social distancing, we are outside. So I will not be looking only at the camera today because there are human beings here in the same space, which is amazing. And I'm using the earbuds today so that some of the traffic noise doesn't come in as much. So welcome. I'm so happy you're all here. So we've been talking about, for the past couple of months, we've been talking about the Paramitas, or the 6 perfections. And to review, their generosity, can you hear? Generosity, ethics, patience, diligence, concentration, and wisdom. The 6 Paramitas. And let me just turn it a little. So we've been focused on the last few weeks on wisdom, and I wanted to continue on talking about wisdom. The essence of wisdom is learning to really trust in our Buddha nature. And this is something that the words might sound easy to do, but the actual doing it becomes more challenging. So how do we learn to trust in our own Buddha nature, in our own inherent goodness, our own inherent enlightenment? And how do we learn how to trust that inner wisdom when it comes out? So we all, of course, have access to the teachings, the Buddhist teachings, which are available, right now in English, which is a commonly shared language by a lot of people for the first time in the history of Buddhism. We have access to the teachers, to the human beings who have practiced this for a long time. And we also have access to our inner teacher. And this is a really important aspect of understanding wisdom. So a key aspect of this is not looking for something outside of ourselves. So how do we do that? That's the real question here. So we already have everything that we need for transformation and for healing and for being a force of positivity in the world and compassion. So how do we open that? So fortunately, we have the guide, we have this guide that was compiled from the teachings of the Buddha 2,600 years ago. And we have that as a map for how we can be in the world. And so we don't have to figure this out only by ourselves. We, of course, have to trust in our inherent goodness, and we don't have to do it all by ourselves. We do this with the support of the Sangha, of the community of other practitioners, and with the support of the entire universe. I have some wind, so I'm going to reposition my map. So we have the support of the entire universe to do this practice. But we can't do it only looking for external validation and external support. We have to also find our own internal teacher. So when these things start to come together, the teachings and our inner teacher, then this is where we start to find true wisdom. And so we've talked about the map. And one of the maps is the Paramitas, the practice of generosity, the practice of an ethical lifestyle, really learning how to direct our energy towards doing all that is good and avoiding harm for others and for ourselves. We have the practice of patience, understanding that this takes a long time, that we can't expect magic And we can't expect easy answers, that we have to be in this as a lifetime practice for the long haul. But together, we have the practice of concentration, which we talked about, really cultivating the ability to be still, the ability to sit, and to let our mind settle. And without this concentrated mind, wisdom is not possible. And in fact, without any one of these paramitas, the others are not possible. So they're very dependent on each other. The teacher Thich Nhat Hanh speaks about this, or writes about this in the book on, I think it's Zen or Buddhism, but Zen and Power. And he talks about the role of faith. In this case, I'm calling faith in our Buddha nature. So when you have the energy of faith in you, and again, faith in our Buddha nature, in our inherent goodness, then you're strong. But the word faith is better translated as confidence or trust, because it's not about something outside of you, and it's not directed towards something external. So the Zen ancestor Ling Chi used to say to his students, you who don't have enough confidence in yourself, you go around seeking things outside. You need to have confidence that you have the capacity to become a Buddha, the capacity of transformation and healing. And faith is having a path that leads you to freedom, liberation, and the transformation of our afflictions. If we've seen the path, we have a path to go on, then we have power. Those who have no path wander around and suffer. They don't know where to go. So you've been searching for a path, and now you've found a path, and you've seen the way, because we're all here, right? And if you have some experience that this path leads you in a good direction, then you'll have more faith in the path. If you're happy that you have the path, then you begin to have power. The power will not destroy you or the people around you. In fact, it gives you strength and energy that other people can feel. When you have faith, your eyes are bright and your steps are more confident. This is power. You can generate this kind of energy every moment of your life, and it will bring you a lot of happiness. You come back. So that was Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. When we think of power, a lot of us have feelings of either wanting, grasping, or fear, like a repulsion. But power can be something that can benefit us, benefit our practice, and benefit others around us if we learn to use it well. If we learn to cultivate this power, not for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings. So we have to continuously reorient in this direction. So we reorient in this direction through our sitting practice and really learning to sit, to follow our breaths, to notice when thoughts arise, to come back to the breath, letting go of our ego, letting go of our own ideas of what we think is right or wrong, and allowing wisdom to naturally arise. We cultivate this ability also through our Sangha, because we can't see our own stuff. You know, we can't see our own blind spots, just obviously because it's a blind spot, it's behind us. So we need other people to be with us, not only to see us and recognize my Buddha nature in you and your Buddha nature in me, but to help us see the areas where we need more work. Well, this is part of the value of Sangha. And this is also the value of having a teacher. And we can't just make this up. We can't just come in and sit down and know everything instantly. It takes a lot of work and teaching and time and feedback. And I think, you know, our culture here especially in the United States, we have a kind of a mentality of wanting to jump over the hard stuff and get the rewards. But what is a reward? So a lot of people see the reward as the ability to teach. But the ability to teach isn't about the words that come out of the mouth. The ability to teach is about the internalized practice that comes out of your pores. And it's not something that we cultivate, check a box, and finish. It's a lifetime process that we're continually engaging in. So for me if I were to put on robes and sit here and say, I am a Zen teacher, then that's just words, right? We have to also embody that in every aspect of our being. And I think, you know, when we start to have problems with power is where we're not quite aligned. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have the training, but perhaps we got off a little bit and we're not getting good feedback. Or perhaps it means that we haven't had the training. Or perhaps it means that my ego is coming in and really, you know, sometimes when we are in a position of power, we start to like it. So we have to continually reorient. Again, reorient through our sitting practice and really taking that very seriously with our concentration and with the teachings. Seriously letting go of our idea of what we think is right, the idea of ourself, the idea of our ego, and really dropping that. Reorienting through feedback, through the Sangha, not just what people say, but how people act around us. We can get feedback in everything we do. You know, if I'm driving the car and somebody cuts in front of me and I flip them a bird, then I can get feedback in my body, first of all. That didn't feel so good to do that. I could get feedback from that person because maybe I see their face and they're angry, or maybe they do more than just show anger. You know, maybe they do it back to me and then I feel bad. So we can get feedback in so many different situations if we are attuned to it and if we are using our practice to really learn how to drop our ego so that our own ideas of what we think is right and wrong don't get in the way. So this is how we learn to cultivate practice, not for our own power or our own personal understanding, but for the benefit of all beings in the universe. This is a really important point to understand. Power, when used wrongly, can be very destructive. And I think we've all seen examples of that. And I think that's why we're often afraid of it when it starts to come up in ourselves. But you know, as I've talked about before, there is a solution when we use power wrongly. There's a solution for what to do, and it's called an apology. So it's really not such a big deal to mess up or to make mistakes. It's what we do about it. How do we correct when we make mistakes? And if we learn to make that a continual process as well, messing up, apologizing, correcting, reorienting, then it stops to be such a big deal when we mess up too. I wanted to talk a little bit about power in the way that it's outlined by Cedar Barstow in the right use of power training, which fits really nicely with the way that we understand power through Buddhist teachings, but she has a different perspective. So I went out and did this training with Cedar some years back, and I found it really beneficial for how to live my life. So The right use of power recognizes three kinds of power. First is personal power, the second is role power, and the third is status power. So our personal power is the power that we're born with. It's who we are as human beings. It's our birthright. So in another way of saying that, this is our Buddha nature. Our Buddha nature is our personal power. It's just what we have to work with in this lifetime. You know, some of us are good at music. Some of us are very good with our brains and intellectually. Some of us are really good at just being kind and being a force of niceness in the world. So we all have our special qualities and our unique qualities, and we all are Buddha nature. This is our personal power. Role power is something that we earn. So, for example, if we are a professor, then we don't get to just wake up one day and maybe we read a book and we found that really fascinating. And then we go to a classroom and people want to hear what we have to say, right? I've been reading a lot and I wanted to share with you some of my thoughts. And so I think you all should pay me money to be my students. But this isn't how it works. To become a professor, you must first do training. You have to internalize that training and you have to make it your own. You have to internalize the teachings that you receive intellectually. You have to write. You have to learn how to not just receive knowledge, but make it your own and share it with others. And this is how we earn power. So it would be the same in different situations. For example, I've already talked about becoming a Buddhist teacher. It's a role that we earned through practice. So in this case, it's symbolized by the robe that we put on. In the Zen tradition, the color of our robe changes when we receive teaching authority. It's a sign, an external sign. So other examples of role power might be a police officer. They put on a uniform and a badge, and that role power is something that they should earn. And as you can see where I'm going, it's also something that we have to uphold ethically and responsibly. So once we have that role for a boss at work or for a teacher in a classroom, then we have an ethical responsibility to hold it well. And the third kind of power that the right use of power talks about is status power. And status power is not necessarily earned, but it's something that our society gives us. And an example of that might be wealth. You know, some people, if we have money, we also get an extra bump of power just from having that money. Or whiteness is something that we have been talking about a lot in the last few months. So whiteness is a status power that's not earned. Nevertheless, society recognizes this as a kind of power. So if we do have the status power, you know, whether it's being male or being even just tall people have extra status. Tall people are much more likely to receive promotions, to be elected to public office. So it's not like we have to get rid of that. In fact, I don't think we can because it belongs to our society. It's that we have to learn to use what we have well. And pushing it away is not using it well. So back to the example of being white. If we say that, well, I don't see power, but our skin is white and our society confers extra power to that, then we're actually out of a line ethically because we are pretending that we don't have as much power as we have. And I hope that makes some sense. So let's just back up a little bit and review. We each have personal power. This is our birthright, just what we're born with, our Buddha nature. We can have role power. which is something that we earn, is an add-on, like putting on a robe. And it's something that carries an extra load of responsibility. And we can have status power, which is something our society confers on us. So we have to learn to use these forms of power well. And again, how do we do that? We have our sitting practice. We let go of our ego. We have our Sangha to hold us accountable. And we have our vows. Most of all, we have to be oriented towards the benefit of all beings, not just me. And we do that by dropping our ego, cultivating our practice, and orienting towards compassion. So there's another aspect of this, which is not using the power that we have is also out of alignment with wisdom. And this becomes a little bit tricky for some people because sometimes we didn't ask for the power that we have, especially if it's status power, something like whiteness or being male. Nevertheless, we have it. So if we have power, whether it's our personal power, our Buddha nature, whether it's our role power, our earned power, or our status power, we all have power. So we have to acknowledge, okay, fine, it exists. How are we going to use it to the very best of our abilities to be a force for good in the world, to be compassion in the world? Not based on my own need for acclaim or status, but based on what's best for the whole universe. So if we are born white, then we can use whiteness in ways that people who are born Black don't have access to. Therefore, we must do it if we're going to honor our vows. We must use that. It's figuring out how to best do it. That's the challenge. And that's what we have our practice for, That's what we have our community for. That's why we keep learning and growing and we don't get stuck. So in the right use of power training, she shared an example of somebody who had status power and didn't use it and how that makes others uncomfortable. And I noticed an example of this myself, which I'm going to share with you right now. So once I was at a Buddhist ceremony, and it was quite a large ceremony. And in the case of these ceremonies, often who shows up first are those with the most training. So some of our senior monks and nuns. So they've learned to show up early. They know how to put on their robes through many years of experience, and they'll come and put themselves in place. So this is what happened in this case. Some of the more senior people showed up and chose a place in the room. And then over time, as the bells started to ring and it became late, the rest of the assembly came in. And some of the novices in particular were late. So this is something that, they're always running at the last minute for whatever reason. Maybe they had other jobs or still figuring out their robes. And so the novices, when they came in, there was nowhere for them to stand in the room because the seats, the most senior person had left a few seats at the front, which could be seen as a sign of humility. But there were just enough seats in the room for the number of people present. So by that senior person leaving those seats open, there were no seats in the back of the room for the people of lower status. And so the whole room was in a tizzy. Nobody could settle. They didn't know where to stand. People were whispering, what should I do? People were very anxious. So in this case, I was the person in charge of ringing the bells. And so I went over to the senior person and I said, excuse me, but would you mind taking your place at the front of the room? And they said, oh, no, I'm fine, just where I am. And I was like, okay, I see that you're fine, but the other people are not fine. So it'd really help us out a lot if you could take your place. And so they turned and looked around, noticed all the chaos behind them, stepped into their place, and the whole room got really calm. So this is an example of how we use the power that we have, or the role that we have, for the benefit of others, not just for ourselves. And when we're uncomfortable having that power, it can cause a lot of chaos around us. So how do we use it with humility, really being small, learning not to get our own ego in the way, but so not overusing, but not underusing it. And this is wisdom. And this is the main point of today's talk, is how do we find that balance of wisdom? So again, we have a map. The map is the Buddha's teachings. We have our inner teacher, our Buddha nature, and we have accountability through the Sangha. We have Buddha, our Buddha nature. We have the Dharma, the teachings, and we have the Sangha. And these are the three treasures of Buddhism. And this is why they're the three treasures. These are the three pieces that we need in order to show up in the world in the fullest way possible, based on where we are in our practice, where we are in life, for the benefit of all beings. And this is what it's all about, really being present for the benefit of all beings. So this is what I wanted to say today. Well, thank you for listening.